welcome. Tonight, we will drift back in time to the world of medieval Japan, a land of misty mountains, quiet rice fields, and wooden castles rising above the horizon. A society built on duty, order, and tradition where every breath of wind through the bamboo forests carried with it the weight of honor and silence. As you listen, allow your mind to slow, to soften, as if you too were sitting in a lantern-lit room, the scent of tatami mats in the air, a faint breeze stirring the paper screens. We will walk through the struggles of peasants, the discipline of samurai, the whispers of ninja, and the elegance of the Kyoto court. And as the story unfolds, you may find yourself drifting into calmness, lulled by the steady rhythm of lives lived long ago. Let us begin. Imagine yourself not as a warrior or a lord, but as a simple peasant in the age of the shoguns. Your home is a small wooden hut with a thatched roof, standing at the edge of the rice paddies. The air is heavy with the smell of damp earth and growing grain. From dawn until dusk, your days are consumed by work. The rhythm of your life is the rhythm of the seasons, plowing in spring, planting in summer, harvesting in autumn. Your hands are rough, your back bent, your feet caked with mud. But this work does not bring wealth. Rice, the very crop you nurture with your sweat, is measured, counted, and taxed. Much of what you harvest will be taken away by the local lord, filling his storerooms, while your family survives on what remains. Hunger is a constant shadow. Clothing is simple. Rough hemp garments, patched and faded. Meals are plain, mostly millet, barley, or thin gruel, with the rare addition of fish or vegetables when fortune allows. Meat is almost unheard of. Life is bound by rules. You belong to the lowest tier of the social order, below the samurai, below the merchants, even below the artisans. Movement is restricted, freedom limited. Disobedience is met with punishment, sometimes harsh, sometimes final. And yet, despite the hardship, there is a quiet rhythm in peasant life. The sound of frogs croaking in the rice paddies, the rustle of wind through bamboo groves, the distant toll of temple bells at dusk. These small sounds form the backdrop of your world, offering moments of calm in an otherwise difficult existence. As night falls, you rest on a straw mat, your body aching, your mind weary. Outside, the fields shimmer under the moonlight, and the cycle of labor begins again with the rising sun. Now, imagine yourself not as a peasant, but as a samurai warrior, bound by Bushido, the code of honor. Your days are not filled with mud and harvest, but with training, discipline, and a constant readiness for duty. From the moment you rise before dawn, your life is structured. The first light of the morning touches the paper screens of your home, and already you are preparing for practice. Your armor is not worn every day, but your sword's katana and wakizashi never leave your side. They are more than weapons. They are the soul of your identity. Training is endless. Hours spent in the courtyard, striking at wooden posts with your blade. The steady rhythm of bamboo clashing against bamboo as you practice with a partner. The repetition is endless, designed not for excitement, but for precision, for mastery of form. Bushido demands more than skill. It demands loyalty. The daimyō, your lord, holds your life in his hands. His word is law, and your duty is to obey without hesitation. To falter in loyalty is dishonor, and dishonor is worse than death. Meals are simple, often rice with pickled vegetables, sometimes fish, nothing indulgent. The body is maintained, not pampered. Clothing, too, is modest, a kimono for daily wear, armor only when called upon, and yet, beneath the discipline, there is tension. The life of a samurai is one of constant readiness, a quiet awareness that any day, any moment, you may be called to fight or to die. Death is not feared. It is accepted as part of the path. To live with honor and to die with honor is the only way. When battles come, they are swift and merciless. The clash of steel, the thunder of hooves, the cries of men. But in this retelling, we will not dwell on the chaos. Instead, imagine the silence afterrows of men kneeling, armor still, the wind carrying the scent of smoke across an empty field. At night, the samurai sits in quiet reflection. By lantern light, he sharpens his blade, or perhaps writes poetry on a strip of paper. For Bushido is not only about war, but also about art, restraint, and self-control. The warrior must be as skilled with words as with the sword, as calm in thought as fierce in battle. To be a samurai is to live under constant weight of loyalty, of honor, of expectation. It is a life both elevated and restricted, proud and burdened, a life of silence, obedience, and the ever-present shadow of death. Among the many warriors of medieval Japan, few are remembered as vividly as Minamoto no Yoshitsune. His name still carries the echo of both brilliance and tragedy, woven deeply into the fabric of the Genpei War. Imagine a boy born into the chaos of civil strife. Yoshitsune was a child of the Minamoto clan, destined for a life of conflict. But his early years were not spent on the battlefield. Instead, he was sent to a monastery, growing up among chanting monks and quiet courtyards, far from the world of war. Yet fate would not allow him to remain hidden. As he grew older, Yoshitsune left the monastery, taking up the sword with a natural gift that astonished those around him. He trained with relentless discipline, mastering techniques that seemed almost impossible, leaping onto rooftops, moving with a speed and grace few could match. Legends say he learned from a mythical Tengu in the mountains, though in truth, it was his own dedication that made him extraordinary. When the Genpei War broke out between the Minamoto and Taira clans, Yoshitsune became a commander. His strategies were daring, often defying expectation. He led men through dangerous mountain passes, struck at the enemy with sudden speed, and turned the tide of battles that seemed already lost. His victories brought glory to the Minamoto name, but glory is fragile. Yoshitsune's elder brother, Minamoto no Yoritomo, who would become shogun, began to see him not as an ally, but as a rival. The very brilliance that lifted Yoshitsune up also marked him for downfall. Forced into exile, he wandered through Japan, his once celebrated name now shadowed by suspicion. At last, cornered in the north, Yoshitsune chose to end his life with dignity rather than surrender. He was only in his early 30s. Even in death, however, Yoshitsune lived in ballads, in plays, in whispered tales around the hearth. For the people of Japan, he became more than a warrior. He was a symbol of tragic heroism, of talent crushed by jealousy, of fleeting brilliance in a harsh world. As you reflect on his story, let the steady rhythm of his life guide your breath. Rise, fall, victory, loss. The cycle, like the seasons, unbroken. Now, picture yourself in a Zen monastery, far from the clamor of villages and castles. The air is cool, touched by the scent of pine and around you, the temple grounds are quiet, save for the occasional creak of wood, or the distant sound of a bamboo waterspout emptying into a basin. Life here moves at a slower pace. Before dawn, a bell rings softly through the halls. Monks rise from their simple mats, their robes plain and unadorned. The day begins not with speech, but with silence. In fact, words are rarely spoken. Communication is measured. Gestures are enough. Meditation fills the hours. Sitting still on woven mats, the monks breathe in and out, focusing not on the noise of the world. The stillness is not easy, it demands discipline, just as the sword demands from the samurai butt. It offers another kind of strength. Gardens are tended with patience. Gravel carefully raked into flowing patterns, stones placed with deliberate calm, trees trimmed to create balance rather than excess. These gardens are not meant for display, but for reflection, for allowing the eye and the heart to rest. Meals are plain but nourishing. Rice, vegetables, miso soup. Each bowl is held with gratitude, each bite taken slowly. Nothing is wasted, for everything is considered sacred. And yet, even here, the outside world cannot be ignored. The monastery relies on the offerings of peasants and lords. Samurai sometimes visit, seeking wisdom or guidance. The echoes of conflict ripple faintly through these wooden halls. Still, the monastery endures. It is a place where the endless duties of peasant and warrior fade away, where a man might find peace in the simple act of sitting, breathing, being. Imagine yourself there. Now's the soft sound of a bell, the quiet rustle of robes, the gentle rhythm of your own breath. Slowly, calmly, time slips away, leaving only the silence of the present moment. Step away now from the quiet monastery and enter the shadows of another world, the secretive life of the ninja. Legends paint them as invisible, ghost-like figures moving through the night, cloaked in black, slipping over rooftops, vanishing into smoke. But the reality was quieter, less dramatic, and perhaps even more fascinating. A ninja was not born into glory. Unlike the samurai, bound to honor and tradition, the ninja was often a farmer, a commoner, trained in secrecy. Villages in regions like Iga and Koga became centers of this hidden practice. Here, men and women learned the arts of stealth, disguise, and intelligence gathering. Their tasks were not the great battles sung in poetry. More often, they were whispers, movements in the dark, carrying messages, observing enemies, sometimes spreading rumors that could topple a lord more effectively than a sword. Their tools were simple: ropes, grappling hooks, smoke powders, and sometimes blades. Though violence was not always the goal, deception, silence, and patience were their true weapons. Stories grew around them. Peasants spoke of shadow warriors who could walk on water, summon storms, or vanish into the trees. These tales spread across Japan, turning real men into myth. Even samurai feared them, not always because of what they could do, but because of what was believed about them. And yet, like all people, their lives were bound by routine. Days of practice in quiet forests, the scrape of straw sandals on dirt paths, the endless waiting for moments that might never come. Imagine now the sound of crickets in the grass, the rustle of leaves as someone passes unseen, the faint sense that eyes are watching, though no one is there. Not frightening, but curious, almost dreamlike. The ninja remain, even now, a mixture of truth and legend and echo of secrecy that has never quite faded from Japan's history. Now, leave behind the shadows of the ninja and turn to a class often overlooked in medieval Japan: the merchants. In the rigid social hierarchy, the merchant was placed near the bottom, below the samurai, below the farmer, even below the artisan. Why? Because merchants did not create, they only traded. They sold what others had made or harvested, and to the ruling classes, this seemed dishonorable. Picture yourself as a merchant in a bustling castle town. The narrow streets are lined with wooden stalls and sliding paper doors. Banners flutter gently in the breeze, marked with symbols of shops, fishmongers, cloth sellers, potters, spice traders. The air is filled with the smell of dried fish, ink, incense, and the faint sweetness of rice cakes. Your day begins early. At dawn, you lift the shutters of your shop. The street is still quiet, though a few voices call out as farmers arrive to trade produce for tools. You bow respectfully to passing samurai, even if they sneer in return. Outwardly, you show humility. Inwardly, you know that your coins give you freedoms they cannot always enjoy. Rice is wealth, but silver and copper flow through your hands. You count carefully, stacking coins on low wooden tables. You keep records with brushes on long sheets of paper, each character precise and deliberate. While the law places you low, your influence grows quietly. Samurai may scorn you, but they need you. Farmers need their grain sold. Artisans need their wares purchased. Your children learn numbers before they learn swordsmanship. They listen to stories of trade routes, of silk arriving from China, of strange objects from lands beyond the seas. And though the samurai hold power, you know something they cannot admit. Money has a quiet power of its own. Castles rise on taxes. Armies march on rice. And rice must always be moved, counted, sold, and stored. Still, life is not without risk. A single poor harvest can ruin a year's profit. Fires, so common in wooden towns, can consume not only shops but fortunes. A daimyō's sudden decree might cut your trade route overnight, but every morning the shutters rise again. The hum of the market begins. Footsteps on wooden planks echo. Voices overlap in bargaining tones. Slowly, steadily, wealth grows not loud like the clang of swords, but soft like the steady drip of water filling a jar. As night returns, lanterns glow above the streets. The smell of smoke and grilled fish drifts through the air. Merchants gather quietly, speaking in low voices, counting coins by candlelight, dreaming of a future where their children may rise higher than their station. Though forgotten in the grand stories of war and honor, the merchants kept the lifeblood of Japan flowing, coin by coin, deal by deal, lantern by lantern. The sun has set over Kyoto. The castle walls are shadows against the twilight sky, and the streets of the city grow quieter. But not everywhere is silence. In the districts set aside for pleasure and art, the night is just beginning. Lanterns sway gently in the breeze, their paper skins glowing with warm orange light. The scent of grilled fish and sweet rice cakes lingers in the air. This is the world of the geisha. It is not a world of armies or rice fields, not a world of battle or sweat, but one of refinement. Here, skill is measured, not in sword strokes, but in the way a sleeve falls from an arm, the way a song lingers in the air, the way a guest forgets the weight of his day as laughter fills the room. Imagine walking through the narrow streets of Gion. The paving stones beneath your sandals are smooth, worn by centuries of footsteps. The houses are low and wooden, their sliding paper doors glowing faintly from within. From behind those doors, you hear the faint notes of the shamisen, a twang, a pause, a rhythm that calls softly to the ear. Now a door slides open. A figure steps into the lantern light. She is a Mako, an apprentice geisha, dressed in a kimono so heavy with silk it seems to float more than move. Her face is painted white, her lips red, her eyes outlined with care. Her hair is styled high, decorated with ornaments that catch the light. She does not rush. Every step is measured, graceful, deliberate. Even the way she lifts her sleeve seems like part of a dance. Inside the Ochayatha tea house, the atmosphere is calm. Guests sit on tatami mats, the low tables set with small dishes of pickled vegetables, bowls of soup, cups of sake. The room smells of wood, tatami, and faint incense. It is not loud, not chaotic. It is gentle, warm, and slow. The geisha moves among the guests with a rhythm that seems effortless. She kneels gracefully, pours sake without spilling a drop, listens with patience. When she laughs, it is not sudden or harsh, but soft, like a breeze stirring reeds along a riverbank. Every gesture is trained, rehearsed, perfected, and yet it feels natural, easy. That is the art. But behind this effortlessness lies discipline. From childhood, the Mako trains. Before dawn, she rises to practice dance, repeating each step again and again until her feet ache. She studies the shamisen, her fingers pressing strings until calluses form. She practices conversation, learning how to guide words like a gentle current, how to ease tension, how to flatter without falsehood. There is nothing accidental in her art. What appears to be simple laughter or an elegant bow is the product of years of practice. The world of the geisha is one of contrast. On the surface, it is light and delicate, filled with music and beauty. Beneath, it is hard work, long hours, unrelenting expectations. Apprentices often cried from exhaustion, yet they continued, for to become a geisha was to enter a life of respect, a place where even the most powerful samurai would bow his head to hear your song. Outside, the streets hum with quiet life. Merchants carry home their unsold wares. Lanterns flicker in doorways. A samurai passes, his hand resting on the hilt of his sword, though here he is a guest, not a master. The entertainment districts are a space apart, where rules bend, where hierarchies soften. Here, a geisha's presence holds more weight than a soldier's blade. The tea house fills with the sound of the shamisen, joined now by singing. The notes are not rushed. They flow slowly, steadily, like a stream winding through stones. The melody is simple, repeating, almost hypnotic. It is not meant to excite, but to soothe, to carry the listener into a different state of mind. Imagine sitting there now, the psych cup warm in your hands, the laughter around you gentle, not sharp, the candlelight flickering across painted faces, the smell of incense wrapping around you like a thin veil. The night drifts on without urgency. Time itself seems to move differently, slower, calmer, and still. When the guests leave, the work does not end. The Mako removes her heavy kimono, brushes the powder from her face, untangles her hair. She studies her lessons. She prepares for another day. She knows that this path is long, but she also knows that each night she performs, she becomes closer to perfection in her art. The world of the geisha is more than entertainment. It is discipline disguised as ease. It is art born of sacrifice. It is tradition carried forward through centuries, reminding us that beauty itself can be a form of labor, and that even in a land ruled by the sword, the quiet strength of song and laughter had its own power. Now, as you rest, imagine once more the sound of the shamisen, soft, steady, repeating. Let it guide your breath, slow and calm. In, out, in, out. The lanterns dim, the voices fade, the music becomes softer, until there is only silence and the comfort of sleep. The night in Kyoto fades into dawn, and with the rising sun, we turn away from lantern-lit tea houses and back to another world, the world of the samurai. The samurai were not just warriors. They were a class, a way of life, a symbol. And at the heart of their existence was Bushido, the way of the warrior. It is easy to imagine them only as men with swords, clad in armor, their helmets adorned with horns or crests. But their lives were not constant battles. Most days were not spent on the battlefield, but in study, in ritual, in service. Their code of honor shaped how they ate, how they dressed, how they spoke, even how they died. Bushido was not written in a single book. It was a living code, a set of expectations passed down through generations. At its heart lay loyalty to one's lord, to one's clan. A samurai was nothing without his master. His life was tied to service, his identity bound to another's will. Imagine waking each morning as a samurai. The sun barely risen. You kneel on tatami mats, the room quiet except for the rustle of your kimono. You bow to the household shrine, honoring ancestors who lived by the same code. You eat a simple meal, rice, miso, pickles. There is no indulgence, no excess. Every action is measured. Your daimyō's orders guide your day. Perhaps you practice swordsmanship in the courtyard, the bamboo targets split clean by your blade. Perhaps you study poetry, for a true samurai must master words as well as weapons. Perhaps you ride to inspect villages, ensuring the farmers pay their taxes, ensuring the fields are guarded. Discipline is constant, anger is suppressed, fear hidden. To live by Bushido is to carry oneself with composure, to never show weakness, to endure pain with silence. Even in death, composure is required. The sword itself was more than a weapon. It was the soul of the samurai, forged with care, folded steel upon steel, polished until it gleamed like water under the moonlight. To draw it was not done lightly. To lose it was shame. To wield it carelessly was dishonor. But Bushido was not only about loyalty and bravery, it was also about compassion, about justice. A samurai was expected to rule fairly, to protect those below him. To abuse power was to fail the code. And yet, history is filled with contradictions, moments where greed and cruelty triumphed, where the ideals of Bushido clashed with the realities of war and politics. For many samurai, the greatest test of honor came not in battle, but in death. To die with dignity was the final proof of loyalty. Seppuku, ritual suicide, was both feared and respected. It was an end chosen to preserve honor when all else was lost. And though the act was grim, the ritual was calm, controlled, ceremonial. Even in death, the samurai showed discipline. Now, imagine sitting in the quiet of a samurai's home. The garden outside is still, a koi pond, reflecting the morning light. A breeze stirs the bamboo. Inside, scrolls line the walls, inked with calligraphy of Confucian teachings. Zen poems, family crests. The smell of tatami and incense mingles with the faint polish of steel. Life here is not chaos, it is ritual, ordered, deliberate, Bushido-shaped, not only warriors, but Japan itself. Its echoes remain in values of discipline, respect, and perseverance. Even when the age of the samurai faded, their code endured, whispered in stories, remembered in customs, carved into the very identity of a nation. For the samurai, honor was more than a word. It was the rhythm of their breath, the weight of their blade, the silence of their endurance. As you breathe now, slow and steady, imagine the calm of their lives, the composure in every gesture, the discipline in every step, the unyielding sense of duty that carried them from birth to death. And in this rhythm, steady and quiet, let yourself drift to carried by the way of the warrior, softened now into the stillness of sleep. As the sun climbs higher over the Japanese landscape, our journey shifts once again from the quiet homes of samurai and the gentle elegance of geisha. We now move to the towering symbols of authority and ambition, the castles of the daimyō. Castles in medieval Japan were not just fortresses of stone and wood. They were living centers of power, entire worlds contained within walls, where politics, ceremony, and daily life intertwined. Imagine first approaching such a castle. The path winds uphill, zigzagging through narrow gates and corridors. This was no accident. Every turn, every slope, every hidden corner was designed to slow an enemy, to confuse them, to expose them to attack from above. High walls rose on either side, built of massive stones, carefully stacked without mortar, their curves shaped like waves, designed to withstand earthquakes and sieges alike. At the summit, the great keep rises, a towering structure of white plastered walls, tiled roofs, layered one above another like the wings of cranes. From afar, it appears almost weightless, graceful against the sky. But inside, it is built for defense, narrow windows, for archers, steep stairs to tire intruders, secret passages that only the defenders knew. Yet a castle was more than defense. It was the heart of a domain, a reflection of its lord. Within the walls, entire towns flourished. Artisans, merchants, farmers, and soldiers all lived under the daimyo's gaze. Markets bustled at the gates, their stalls filled with fish from nearby rivers, lacquerware polished to shine, silks dyed in deep blues and reds. The castle town was alive, sustained by the presence of the fortress above it. Inside the inner walls, life shifted. The samurai quarters lined the paths, their wooden homes marked by crests of their clans. Here, warriors lived with their families, ever ready to serve. Beyond, in the central compound, the daimyo held court. Imagine walking through the great hall. Tatami mats cover the floor, polished wood beams rise high above, painted screens divide rooms. The daimyo sits in silence, his retainers kneeling before him. Every word spoken here is careful, formal, deliberate. Behind the gestures of deference lies tension. Allies and rivals share the same space, and each bow carries layers of meaning. The daimyo himself was more than a ruler. He was both protector and master, both patron and judge. His power depended not only on his armies, but on his ability to maintain loyalty, to reward service, to manage the delicate balance of politics. At times, he was a warrior, leading men into battle. At others, he was a diplomat, sending gifts, arranging marriages, forging alliances, that could last generations. The castle was also a place of ritual. Festivals filled its courtyards with lanterns and music. Buddhist monks chanted sutras in its halls, seeking to protect the Lord and his family. Messengers arrived daily, bearing news from distant provinces, carrying reports of harvests, of taxes, of rumors. Every sound, the clatter of sandals on stone, the call of guards at the gates, the ringing of bells did to the rhythm of castle life. But power was fragile. A castle could stand for decades, even centuries, yet fall in a single day of betrayal. Fires, too, were constant threats, for wood and paper made the walls as vulnerable as they were beautiful. Many great castles rose, and many fell, their ruins scattered across Japan's mountains and plains, silent reminders of ambition and impermanence. Still, for those who lived within them, castles were worlds unto themselves. Children played in courtyards, chasing one another between gardens and gates. Samurai polished their armor until it gleamed in the sun. Servants moved quietly, tending to rooms, carrying trays of rice and tea. And at night, lanterns glowed against the white walls, the keep standing tall above the town below, a beacon of order in a land of constant change. Now, as you imagine this castle, see the shadows of its walls stretching long across the fields. Hear the faint call of a guard in the distance, the quiet rush of wind through the tiled roofs. Feel the cool stone beneath your hands, the weight of history pressing softly, steadily around you. The castle was strength, it was beauty, it was power given form, and in its quiet halls, even now, you might almost hear the footsteps of those who once walked their daimyō. And samurai, servants and children, all part of a life built within walls of wood and stone. As the night deepens, we turn away from castles and the ambitions of lords, and step softly into a different world, the world of faith, ritual, and the quiet search for meaning. Religion in medieval Japan was never a single path. It was a tapestry woven from many threads. Buddhism, Shinto, Confucian ideals, and folk beliefs passed down through generations. To live in this time was to move between these traditions, to find comfort in their rhythms, to let them shape the flow of each day. Imagine waking at dawn in a small farming village. The first light falls across the rice fields, and you hear the ringing of a temple bell in the distance. The sound is low, deep, and steady. It rolls across the valley like a wave, calling everyone to remember the presence of something greater. For the farmer, that sound is a comfort. It marks the start of work. It ties the rhythm of labor to the rhythm of the sacred. At the edge of the village stands a Shinto shrine. The entrance is marked by a torii gate, simple wooden beams rising against the sky. Passing through, it feels like crossing into another world. The path is lined with trees, their leaves shifting in the breeze, their roots tangled in earth that has been walked by centuries of worshippers. At the shrine, offerings are simple: rice sake, a coin, hands clap softly, prayers are whispered, requests are made to the kami, the spirits believed to dwell in all things, in rocks, rivers, winds, and forests. But the shrine was only one part of spiritual life. The Buddhist temple was another. In the dim halls, incense smoke curled upward, carrying prayers into silence. Monks in robes chanted sutras, their voices blending in unison, creating a steady rhythm that could last for hours. For those who listened, the chant was not just sound, it was a thread that tied the listener to peace, to stillness, to release from the struggles of daily life. Zen Buddhism, in particular, shaped the age. Samurai, lords, and commoners alike found wisdom in its practices. Imagine kneeling in a silent garden, the sand carefully raked into patterns of waves and circles. Rocks stand like islands, trees bend with the wind, moss clings to stone. Nothing moves quickly here. Time seems suspended. A single leaf falling from a tree is enough to hold your attention. Zen was not about words or doctrines, it was about experience, about silence, about learning from the smallest details. Festivals brought these beliefs together in celebration. Lanterns were lit, drums were beaten, masks were worn. Villagers carried portable shrines through the streets, voices rising in song. These moments were both joy and devotion, a way of uniting the community under the watch of gods and ancestors. Yet spirituality was not always grand. Often it was quiet, personal. A samurai might whisper a prayer before drawing his sword. A mother might leave rice at the family altar to honor her parents. A traveler might bow at a roadside shrine, asking for safe passage. These small acts, repeated day after day, tied people to something larger than themselves. Even death was shaped by faith. Funerals followed Buddhist rites, the body laid with care, prayers guiding the spirit to another world. Ancestors were remembered not as gone, but as present, watching, guiding. Life and death were not separate, they flowed into one another, like rivers into the sea. Now, as you imagine this world, hear once more the ringing of the temple bell. Feel the weight of incense, smoke in the air. Picture the faint glow of lanterns against the night sky, the quiet prayers whispered into the wind. Religion and spiritual life in medieval Japan were not distant or abstract. They were woven into every breath, every gesture, every sunrise and sunset. They gave shape to uncertainty. They gave comfort to hardship. They gave meaning to lives lived in both struggle and beauty. And as you breathe now, slow and steady, let that same rhythm surround you. The bell tolls once more. The chant fades into silence. The lanterns dim. The world becomes still, calm, gentle, like a temple at night.